Hello! Alright, today's lesson we're going to look at multi-step trig problems. It basically is two right triangles slapped together. So let's read the directions. Find the length of the side labeled x. Round intermediate values, that means values in the middle of the problem, to the nearest tenth. Use the rounded values to calculate the next value. Round your final answer to the nearest tenth. So basically everything we calculate, round to the nearest tenth. Alright, so if we look at our first problem, x is over here on this right triangle. Now if I cover up the other piece, you'll see I have one side and one angle. That's all I have. I cannot solve for that side without having at least another side somewhere. So that's why they gave us this piece. On these problems that we're going to do today, the first thing that you want to do is find this side where they're connected. They're connected right here, that little dashy line. Okay? Yeah. So I'm going to call that side y for right now because I already have an x. So I'm going to use y. And so I'm just going to focus on this triangle first and find this, and then I'll be able to find that one. So it's just doing two trig problems in one. It's not a big deal. So if we're looking at the left-hand side equation, I have 30 degrees. My right angle's over here. And so what side are we looking for? The y would be the adjacent. And the 48 over here is opposite the right angle. It's the longest side. That is the hypotenuse. So if we're thinking SOHCAHTOA, adjacent and hypotenuse would be in the ka. That's the cosine part. And so we're going to have cosine of 30 degrees equals y over 48. How do we solve that again?
Multiply by 48.
Calculator.
Multiply by 48. Use the calculator. Make sure you're in degree mode. So we're going to multiply both sides by 48, except I just wrote 48 3 times instead of 2. And that will solve for y. So we're going to have 48 times cosine of 30. This is what it looks like on my calculator when I typed it in. There you go. And so we get 41.56, but it said to round to the nearest tenth. Here's the tenth spot. So that means the number I can use would actually be 41.6. Okay, so I'm going to take off this adjacent and everything that I wrote on here because that might confuse me on the next step. So I now know that this part right here is 41.6. And I'm going to focus now just on the right-hand side. So 41.6 is opposite the 40. So now that becomes the opposite side for this triangle. And then what side is the x? Adjacent. We're not using hypotenuse at all. So the one that uses opposite and adjacent is TOA, the tangent. So I'm going to set up tangent of 40 degrees equals 41.6 over x. Now we just watched a really cool video a little bit ago, and I don't know if you guys caught it. There was a thing in the first video we watched about if the x is in the bottom, there was a shortcut. Do you want to know the shortcut? You can actually just flip these two things. X would equal 41.6 over tangent 40 degrees. It's basically because you're going to multiply by the x and then divide by that to get x alone, which we looked at yesterday. We did it over and over and over again. This just does it in one step, makes it a little bit faster. So I'm going to take that 41.6 on my calculator and divide by tangent of 40 degrees. And we will get, it comes out 49.576 blah, blah, blah. It tells us to round to the nearest tenth spot, which would be right here. So the 5 will go up to 6 because it's next to the 7. So 49.6. Okay? So this isn't really harder than what we've done before. It's just you have to do it twice. And we're always going to look for the little dashy line where the two triangles come together first, because that's always going to give us what we need. So let's go ahead and look at this next one. So the x is over here, and if I just look at this side, you can tell that's the hypotenuse of this triangle, but all I have is an angle. That's not enough information. But if I could find this side over here where it meets with this triangle, then I should be able to do it. So I'm going to call that side, that little dashy line, y. And I'm just going to focus on this left-hand triangle for a second. What sides are we working with? What's the 22? H, that's our hypotenuse. And then y is the side we sort of just named. With reference to the 54, is it opposite or adjacent? Adjacent. So this would be the adjacent side for this triangle. So if we're using adjacent and hypotenuse, that's the in the ka part of SOHCAHTOA. And so we're going to use cosine. Cosine 54 degrees equals y over 22. Okay, so we solve that. We get y by itself by taking both sides times 22. And that works because it cancels out the divide by 22, and we can just type it in, 22 times cosine of 54 degrees. And we get 12.93, so we'll round that off to 12.9 to actually put it on our picture. So that was the y, this side in here. So I'm going to erase that adjacent and the y in there. That's going to confuse me. And put 12.9 on that side right there. And we'll use that to find x over here. So on this triangle, which side is the x that we're looking for? Hypotenuse. And then we have this 12.9, which is also part of that 25-degree angle. So is that opposite or adjacent? Adjacent. So this would be adjacent and hypotenuse. That's again the in the ka on SOHCAHTOA. And so we're going to use cosine again. Cosine of 25 degrees this time because we're on this triangle equals 12.9, if I can write legibly, over x. So the trick I just showed you, we can flip-flop these two things, and then x would be 12.9 over cosine 25. We saw that work over and over and over again yesterday when we were rearranging them algebraically. Now we can just kind of skip to this shortcut. So 12.9 divided by cosine of 25 is 14.23. So if we're rounding to the nearest tenth, 14.2. We do not round it up because 3 is not big enough to make it go up. It's got to be at least 5 in the next spot. Okay, so those two problems were basically the same. There's a little twist on 3 and 4. Not a big twist, a little twist. Okay, so down here it says find the area of each triangle. Wait, what? So let's talk about area of a triangle. The formula is base times height divided by 2 or 1/2 base times height, depending on which way you learned it. Base times height divided by 2 is easier for most people, but it's basically the same thing. So when we get all of our information, we're going to have to figure out which is the base and the height of this big overall triangle, and we're going to find the area on the last step. So really, we're not doing too much more, just a little extra math, a little review from middle school, an area of triangles, which is good for us. So to find this, we are going to need this number because that's going to be my height. And so instead of calling it y this time, I'm going to call it h. And then we'll also need this over here. So I'm going to call this little space over here x because they haven't used x yet. And then this distance all the way across here will be the base that we need in the final step.
I'd love to ask you for that, getting all of it.
Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is we're going to start with wherever we've got numbers. So this left-hand triangle just has 60 degrees. There are no sides. I can't do that. So I'm going to do this little triangle instead because I have 36 degrees and the 41, so I could solve for this little h side. So if I'm using the 36 over here, what is 41? Which side?
Opposite.
Opposite. And then this would be the adjacent side. So I called it h for height. Don't think h for hypotenuse. Maybe I should have called that something else. It'll be fine. So when we set that up, opposite and adjacent would be the oa in the toa of your SOHCAHTOA. So we're going to use tangent. Tangent 36 degrees is 41 over the height of my triangle. So using that trick that we have discovered, we can switch these. And so the height of the triangle is 41 divided by tangent 36 degrees. I'll type that in. And so the height of the triangle comes out 56.43. So I'm just going to round it off to 56.4. We will need that number. So I'm going to erase that opposite and adjacent stuff so it doesn't confuse me and put in 56.4 so I can see it on the picture. It's really key to put it on the picture so you can see it. All right, so we need to know what this little piece is down here also, this little x. So now that I have this, I can find that. So we're going to use 60 degrees as our angle now. and x would be the opposite, and the 56.4, which you can't really read because I have sloppy handwriting, would be the adjacent to 60 degrees. So opposite and adjacent, again, is tangent. So we'll have tangent of 60 degrees equals x over 56.4. So on this one, we're just going to multiply both sides by 56.4. And that gets the 56.4 out of the denominator. And we'll type that in, 56.4 times tangent 60. And we get 97.68. So I'm going to round that to 97.7, rounding to the nearest tenths. Okay, so if I put that on the picture, take that little x off that we were working with. Now I know that this little piece right here is 97.7. So that's not my base, that's part of my base, and the other part is 41. So I'm going to have to add that to 41 to actually get the base. So it'd be 138.7 is the base of my triangle, the B. I'll just call it B. And then your last thing is to find the area. So area is base times height divided by 2. So take 56.4 times 138.7 and divide by 2. So all this adds into it's a little adding and a little dividing. And we end up with an area of 3911.34, so I'll round off to 0.3. And they didn't give us any units, and that bothers me, so I'm going to call it units squared.
I was just about to say how I hated how I don't actually I just put.
I know, we don't have feet squared or inches squared, so we'll just call it units squared. It'll be fine. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at number 4. Hopefully I left myself enough space to work. So again, we're trying to find the area. So what we're going to need, this is the height of my triangle right here. This we'll call x for right now. And this would be the whole base. Don't we know what?
I was just wondering, are we done on the base? Now it's the angle.
No, you have 31 over here, but you don't have this part over here. And we're doing this whole big triangle as a big one. Okay, so over here I have 29 degrees on this little triangle, but no sides, so I can't really work with that. Over here I have an angle and a side. I can work with that. So this 31 would be adjacent. And then this height right here is actually the opposite side. So I've got adjacent and opposite. Which one am I going to use? Tangent for TOA. Good job. So I'm going to have tangent of 45 degrees equals h, the height, over 31. So essentially we're going to multiply both sides by 31. And type that in. So 31 times tangent of 45 degrees is 31. Evidently tangent of 45 is 1. I should have known that. I did know that, but
Did you know?
I did know that. Okay, so 31 is the height. So I'm going to take off some of the stuff that I just wrote on there that will be confusing to me and put a 31 there. And then we can concentrate on this left-hand triangle. So here's the angle we're working with is 29 degrees. 31 is across from that, so that would be the opposite, and x is next to it, so that would be the adjacent. So opposite and adjacent, again, would be tangent. So we'll have tangent of 29 degrees equals 31 over x. So what was the trick for these? Just switch the bottom of this with this side. The 31 is the only thing that stays. So we'll get x equals 31 over tangent 29. And we get 55.92, so I'm going to round that to 55.9. So now that is, I'm going to erase some things. That is this little piece right here, 55.9 is from here to here, and then I have 31 from here to here. So if we want to get the entire base, we'll add on that extra little piece of 31 to give us 86.9, and that is the base of the big overall triangle. Sorry, you can't see what I just wrote. And so then we have to find the area of the triangle. So the area is base times height divided by 2. So 89.6 times 31 divided by 2. 86.9 times 31 divided by 2 is, it comes out 1346.95. Ooh, how do I round that to the tenths?
You have to round it up.
Have to round it up. So 9 goes to 10, and you carry the 1, and you get a 7 there. And the 0.0 is kind of optional, but it kind of explains what we're doing. And then I like to put units squared for my area since they didn't give us any labels there.